Hello, folks, and welcome to The Farm, a podcast dedicated to culture, parapolitics, and high weirdness in all its many forms. This is your host, Recluse, aka Steven Snyder, the longtime curator of the Visa blog and author of A Special Relationship, Trump, Epstein, and the Secret History of the Anglo-American Establishment. If you like what you hear here today, be sure to check me out at visupview.blogspot.com. That is visupview.blogspot.com. And procure a copy of that book and my other works at the Farm's official store, which is at thefarmpodcast.store. That is thefarmpodcast, all one word, .store. And please consider signing up for the Farm's Patreon. You get 2 additional full-length shows per month. That's between 3 and 4 hours of bonus material with exclusive guests and content. Okay, all right, guys. Today is a repeating guest, to put it mildly. Actually, he's more of a reoccurring character. Folks, I give you guys the great John Brisson of We've Read the Documents. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir.
Anytime, Recluse. Glad to be back on, brother.
Absolutely, and it's nice to have you back. Certainly my heart, and I'm sure all of our listeners' hearts go out to you with the troubles that you have recently had, sir.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely, man. You are a gem. All right. Today's topic is a crucial one. It is centered around a loose affiliation of individuals that the media has dubbed the PayPal Mafia. Now, a lot of elite circles get attention, especially those surrounding the Davos crowd. The so-called alternative media have had a field day for the past year chronicling the intrigues of the World Economic Forum and their Machiavellian plans for the COVID response. But is this possibly being oversold? As John and I will explore throughout this episode, the PayPal Mafia finds itself well positioned in many crucial fields such as finance, intelligence, and defense contracting. They've made a lot of moves for nearly 2 decades now to be in the place that they're in. And by our estimation, they are ready to bring the Red Wedding to the Davos sect in the reenactment of Game of Thrones that is currently being played out on the world stage. So, today we are going to take you through the history of the PayPal Mafia, their rise, and most importantly, what their plans for the future may entail. This is going to be an amazing episode and a crucial one, so make sure you guys are taking notes. So, with that said, let us get rolling, John Boy. All right. Before getting to PayPal, we need to consider the Godfather. So tell us about the background of this Peter Thiel guy. It's pretty interesting on a lot of levels.
Oh, yeah, very much so. We're close. So Peter Thiel was born in Frankfurt, West Germany. And he was born to Suzanne and Klaus Frederick Thiel. The family migrated to the United States when Peter Thiel was 1 year old and lived in Cleveland, Ohio, where his father worked as a chemical engineer. Actually, his dad is a well-renowned chemical engineer and is currently working in Germany right now and as a chemical engineer. And so Thiel does have a younger brother, Patrick Michael Thiel. Patrick Thiel works for Peter Thiel, but I couldn't really find much information on Patrick. Before they had settled in California in 1977, the Thiels lived in South Africa and Southwest Africa, and Peter was kind of like in these very strict private schools there that made him wear uniforms and utilize corporal punishment and everything, and it kind of got Thiel supposedly a bad taste in his mouth for kind of like establishments. So
I believe that that kind of milieu in South Africa and Southwest Africa, the schools were sort of like the dreaded military academies in the American South, if I'm not mistaken. To kind of, if you grew up in the South, that was probably a threat that you heard occasionally about being sent off to military school. I don't know if you ever got that from your parents, John, but I certainly did. So
I did not. No, I went to public school. But I don't think I forgot to mention that Peter Thiel was born in October 11, 1967. But that's where he got kind of like his supposed support and believe, for individualism and libertarianism because of it.
Now,
Uh,
Elon Musk also had ties to South Africa too, right?
yes, too as well.
That's very
Um,
interesting.
yeah, so I don't know if it's just there's some training going down there in South Africa, the behest of the American government. I guess who knows, but yes, I think Elon Musk, he was born in South Africa, right? I think I can't remember exactly where. I think it was early 1970s. Elon Musk was born.
Not
So
entirely sure, but early 70s would sounds about right.
and then yeah, so it was somewhere in South Africa. Um, and so Musk, not Musk, Teal, was kind of a nerd. He liked to play Dungeons and Dragons. He'd read science fiction. Of course, I believe one of his favorite authors was J.R.R. Tolkien, because he named his 6 firms out of Tolkien. Palantir, Valor Ventures, Mithril Capital, Limbas LLC, Rivendell LLC, and Arctic Capital. And also, Teal he was a chess prodigy as a child too as well. When he was in high school, he read Ayn Rand and admired the optimism and anti-communism of then President Ronald Reagan, which will play into some of his connections in a minute. And so he studied philosophy in Stanford University, and would later get his law degree from Stanford Law School. And so Teal, when he was at Stanford, with funding through Council for National Policy member Irving Kristol, the father of Bill Kristol, co-founded the Stanford Review, which was kind of like this conservative libertarian newspaper, and it was founded in the late 1980s. And also later on, after Teal graduated from Stanford Law School, he hung out a lot with Council for National Policy member, a former Secretary of Education and former drug czar under George H.W. Bush, William Bennett. He was a speechwriter for Bennett. And also, so Teal clerked after graduating from law school for Judge James Larry Edmondson of the United States Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit. And Teal was invited to clerk for Supreme Court Justices Anton Scalia and Kennedy, but he was rejected from both of them. He was not able to work as a clerk for both of the Supreme Court justices.
Did he forget to join Opus Dei before his application in?
And he actually quotes that was his biggest failure, but he learned a lot from it. As well as, I guess one thing I forgot to mention too, in college, Peter Thiel with David O. Sachs, who was one of the PayPal Mafia members, I'll talk about more Sachs later, co-authored the book The Diversity Myth, Multiculturalism and the Politics of Intolerance. And it was published by the Independent Institute, which is a right-wing think tank founded by Bill Koch. So the book is, infamous for being critical of political correctness in higher education, and many liberals on the left are kind of up in arms about the book. Sachs later apologized for some parts that were written in the book, but it's just very interesting. A lot of people that talk about Peter Thiel, they mention him writing that book, so I guess to wrap up Thiel's early to young adulthood, he returned to the Bay Area after traveling the country with William Bennett, and he was able to raise financial support from friends and family, about $1 million to establish Thiel Capital, and he invested $100,000 in PayPal Mafia and PayPal founder Luke Nozak's unsuccessful web-based calendar project. But later, when Thiel was introduced to Nozak's friend and PayPal Mafia, PayPal original founder Max Levchin, they founded their first venture called Confinity, which is a based off a cryptography related company idea in 1998, of course, which would later become the company PayPal. So, like most people who become billionaires and millionaires, or at least appear as such that they are these wealthy characters put forth in front of the population by the world order. Peter Thiel did not come from humble, brash beginnings with no money. It wasn't like he was someone who truly worked his way from the ground up. So, very interesting.
Yes, yes. To get back to Elon Musk for a minute, yes, he was born in South Africa and grew up in Pretoria, which is the capital, and was there until he was 17. So he was born in 1971, so that means he would have left around 1988, which is right around the time that apartheid was winding down, interestingly. So yes, there's also this bizarre connection to apartheid South Africa among at least two of the more prominent PayPal Mafia figures. We don't really understand it, but it seems to be about par of the course for this particular crowd. So anyway, let's briefly get into the founding of PayPal and who some of the other major made men are. There's certainly a colorful cast of characters, to put it mildly.
Yeah, so PayPal was originally established by Max Levchin, Peter Thiel, and Luke Nozak in December 1998 as Confinity, like I mentioned earlier, a company that develops security software for handheld devices. Had no success with the business model, however, so switched its focus onto a digital wallet. First version of PayPal electronic payment system was launched in 1999. So just to go briefly over, a few people, and I'll talk more about PayPal in a minute, that were part of the founding of PayPal and part of the PayPal Mafia. We have Maximilian Levchin. Now, Maximilian Levchin, very interestingly enough, you ever watched the movie Thank You for Smoking?
No, I have not.
Okay, so it was actually backed by Teal, and Levchin was the producer for the movie Thank You for Smoking. And actually, Elon Musk is credited as executive producer for Thank You for Smoking. So Thank You for Smoking, I saw it a long time ago. It
Yeah, no,
stars
I
Aaron
know the
Eckhart.
movie, and it was, from what I remember, it was kind of a glorification a bit of the cigarette industry, right, or something like that. I mean, it was critical, but I mean, I think they sort of took a rather humorous
It's kind of
tone
like
with
black
them.
humor,
Mm,
almost libertarian type humor, you know? But it's
yeah,
very interesting that the PayPal Mafia was very much involved with its production and its release. It's pretty much almost their movie. It was directed by Jason Reitman. So it's very interesting, you know. Jason Reitman really didn't. I mean, he did Juno, if I remember, but I don't remember any other movies that he ever did. Of course, he is the son of Ivan Reitman. Ivan Reitman's extremely famous, obviously. I don't even have to discuss the numerous movies. I'll have to, pretty much mention just Ghostbusters, but there's a lot more. I mean, Space Jam, Animal House, Beethoven. But it's just interesting they chose, Jason Reitman to direct the movie and to write the screenplay, and the PayPal Mafia pretty much funded Thank You for Smoking. I think there's probably something more there if people digged. But actually, the CAPTCHA challenge that you have when you go to websites and everything, you can thank Max Levchin for developing that.
and what was the era that it came out in again?
The movie?
Yeah.
Thank You for Smoking came out, I think, around 2004, 2005. I just had graduated high school, I remember.
It's interesting. It's just I'm just trying to put in context what they might have been up to around that time, because I mean, films have been known as a means to launder money for various reasons. Of course, the Cotton Club is very famous with that, and the murder of Roy Raden, that was kind of tied in with the Medellin cartel and trying to park some drug money on that particular production. Not that I'm suggesting that the PayPal Mafia would ever dream of doing such a thing, but
Oh, never.
there's a lot of creative accounting techniques that could be done with movie production as well.
So Levichin's kind of like the cool member of the PayPal Mafia, all right? If there's such a thing. So, he's the reason why we have the CAPTCHA. The CAPTCHA was one of the first times it was used was for anti-fraud efforts for PayPal. And well, he also one interesting aside, his company HVF, one of the major things that it did was launched a fertility app called Glow to help couples conceive naturally in 2013. So I wonder what information they're tracking. Of course, there's also connections with Levitchin and members of Palantir as well. So we wonder where, quote unquote, that data is going. And also Levitchin also mentioned that he defended the NSA and their espionage and massive surveillance. One last thing about him, because he believed that it's helpful, it's gonna protect us against terrorism. So even if it oversteps its bounds, we shouldn't hate it, So next is a founder of PayPal, which is Luke Nozak. Not really much that I could find about him, other that he wanted to be chronically suspended or cryogenically frozen.
Yeah.
Same with Teal. And
Did they want their whole bodies or just their penises?
Both. Maybe the
Okay,
penis is separate.
I wasn't sure if they were the Epstein and just kind of thought that the little head was the thing that was really worth preserving.
No, I mean, outside of that, I couldn't really find really much on Luke. Were you able to find much on Luke Nozak? I mean, he seems to keep kind of a low profile. He was one of the first investors in SpaceX, but I mean, there wasn't really much that I could really find on him. There's much I could find on some of the other PayPal Mafia members. I'll get to them in a minute. Of course, David O. Sachs. He was an angel investor he was a founding chief operation officer at PayPal and product leader. And he would later go on to invest in Facebook, SpaceX, and Palantir too as well. And like I mentioned earlier, the movie Thank You for Smoking. And he was also the co-author of the diversity myth that I mentioned earlier. Then you have Ken Howry, which Ken Howry is extremely interesting. He was a co-founder of PayPal and the Founders Fund. And he served as U.S. ambassador to the Kingdom of Sweden during the Donald Trump administration from 2019 to 2021. So I wonder how he got that job. I'd assume it's probably from his connections.
Yeah. Probably be a good guess.
So in March 2000, Confinity was acquired by X.com, an online financial service company founded in January 1999 by Elon Musk. Musk was optimistic about the future success of the money transfer business Confinity was developing. Musk and Bill Harris, then president and CEO of X.com, disagreed about the potential future success of the money transfer business, and Harris left the company in May 2000. In October of that year, Musk decided that X.com would terminate its other internet banking operations and focus on PayPal. That same month, Elon Musk was replaced by Peter Thiel as CEO of X.com, which was renamed PayPal in 2001, and went public in 2002. PayPal's IPO listed under the ticker PYPL at $13 per share and generated over $61 million. Shortly after PayPal's initial price offering, the company was acquired by eBay on October 3, 2002 for $1.5 billion. So we have also a member of PayPal, Eric M. Jackson. He was founder and former CEO of WorldNet Daily Books and a former vice president of marketing at PayPal.
So that okay, but Jerry, Jerome Corsi's outfit, right?
WorldNet Daily would be Joseph Farah.
Farah, okay, but Corsi,
Council for National Policy, Joseph Farah. But yes, Corsi wrote for WorldNet Daily. That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Very interesting.
And they've also published books. Michael Savage's book, Jerome Corsi's books. I mean, they're a huge, CMP arm. WorldNet Daily is. So that's quite interesting. So Steve Chin was an employee at PayPal when we first met Chad Hurley and Jawad Karim. Chin was also an early employee at Facebook, although he left several months to start YouTube. 2005, Chad Hurley, Jawad Karim, and Chin founded YouTube when Chin was having the position of Chief Technology Officer. So again, we have a YouTube spinning directly out of PayPal. On October 16th, 2006, Shannon Hurley sold YouTube to Google Inc. for $1.65 billion. So we have a lot of companies that spin out of PayPal, major ones. You know, you have YouTube, you have Elon Musk with SpaceX and Tesla. You know, you have Palantir through Teal. It's just interesting. They seem to be very much involved in a lot of modern things that we use today. I mean, Peter Thiel was one of the early investors into Zuckerberg's Facebook. Of course, Facebook was likely just a repackaged DARPA LifeLog that was, you know, given to Zuckerberg, in my opinion, for him to be the front of Facebook, because Lord knows most people would not, hopefully back then, tolerate, you know, some sort of service where you give the government all your information. Too bad most people didn't realize that Facebook was that too as well, just with a friendly coat of paint of Mark Zuckerberg. And oh, look, the government has nothing to do with it anymore.
What's interesting too, because he gave the loan for Facebook like what, a year or two, I think, after they had founded Palantir, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of people kind of forget, but I mean, it was one of the first data mining outfits set up specifically for intelligence purposes. In a lot of ways, it was kind of the prototype for Cambridge Analytica.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not surprising. Of course, also the later connections, which we will get to in a little bit here. You got anything else there, John?
I think that's about it. Did I miss anything?
Well, let's get to one of the less well-known PayPal Mafia figures that you're quite fascinated by, a certain Rod D. Martin. So what about him, and why has he been on your radar for?
So it's my belief that Rod D. Martin is the primary head of the PayPal Mafia. I know you mentioned that Peter Thiel's the Don earlier. However, Peter Thiel sucks up to Rod D. Martin so much, and Rod D. Martin is not listed as a member of the PayPal Mafia outside of himself listing himself a member of the PayPal Mafia. However, a majority of the people in the PayPal Mafia respect and talk about Rod D. Martin as being the best thing since sliced bread. So you tell me. So Rod D. Martin is the founder and CEO of the Martin Organization, long-term decades Council for National Policy member, Board of Governors, and a Gold Circle member, and a member of the defunct inner circle of the CNP, the Arlington Group, and a current member of the Committee on the Present Danger China, a member of Stratford's Board of Contributors, and a mentor and member of the infamous PayPal Mafia. He formerly served as policy director to Governor Mike Huckabee and as an aide to senior congressional leader John Paul Hammerschmidt. Rod D. Martin's book is titled, and you'll get, this is hilarious, Recluse, The New American Century, While America Will Be Stronger Than You Think. So would you like me to read quotes that Rod D. Martin has on his website of people and how they look up to him very much? Would that interest you at all?
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure they're beautiful, John.
So here we have Peter Thiel, Don of the PayPal Mafia, perhaps America's leading public intellectual from Fortune magazine, okay? Rod D. Martin is one of our nation's leading minds. He possesses a more complete understanding of America than most executives have of their own businesses. He's smart, original, and very committed, a combination that one rarely finds. Here we have Council for National Policy member and father of the atomic hydrogen bomb, should I say, Edward Teller, of course, who ran his own supposed blackmail ring in Hollywood, Edward Teller's Boys. Rod D. Martin is one of America's finest young minds. What are you going to say, Recluse?
Say a longtime luminary of the American Security Council, and oddly also one of the guys who vouched for Bob Lazar working at Area 51. I'm not sure what
seems about right. Going on with the UFO hoax that these people are all, you know, perpetrating right now, or perpetuating, should I say, not perpetrating. The Council for National Policy member Judge Paul Pressler, of course, he's been numerous sex scandals brought up against Judge Paul Pressler, and past president of the Council for National Policy, by the way, retired Texas Appeals Court Justice. I'm proud to have been Rod Martin's friend for a quarter century, and I can tell you that he's one of the finest men and most outstanding leaders in our church and our country today. He's an act for turning everything he touches to success. Next, we have Governor, Council for National Policy member Mike Huckabee, honored by Time Magazine as one of America's 5 best governors. Rod Martin served as a policy director in my administration. He's a tireless worker for convictions. He's a moral, freedom-loving people. He lives a balanced life that includes not only work, but faith and family. He's kind of the dynamic leader we need, a man who has knowledge, ability, and experience to lead us to the 21st century. and someone who is very much in the network of the PayPal Mafia. If you go digging more, you'll find him. That'd be Council for National Policy member and former presidential candidate Steve Forbes. Rodney Martin is a Reaganite, Thatcherite conservative and a man who spent most of his life ministering to and working for the benefit of others. And a rise an advocate for freedom and a leader who understands real changes. Being in Washington, who has a drive and ability to make changes happen. There's also a quote from Elon Musk. I don't have it here in front of me, too, of praising Rodney Martin of how brilliant he is as well. And so Rodney Martin, when you go look on the internet, you really can't find anything. He doesn't have a Wikipedia page that I've been able to find. He's not listed as a member of the PayPal Mafia. That he is one. The praise that that people have given him, both from the CMP and members of the PayPal Mafia and of themselves too as well. And he's pretty much non-existent. Most of y'all probably have never heard of him. If you go to his website, he self-proclaims himself as a futurist, which is extremely odd for someone who considers himself to be a very strong Christian, but I digress. Rodney Martin is definitely a power player that very few people have ever heard of.
Fascinating. But again, that is true of much of the PayPal Mafia outside of Thiel and Musk, obviously, who do like the headlines. But a lot of these guys work more behind the scenes. And, as you've kind of alluded to, they really are responsible for a lot of the major tech barons that now play such a major role in our day-to-day lives. Guys like Mark Zuckerberg, they get a lot of the camera time, but they really weren't the guys who set up a lot of the modern infrastructure of the tech industry, like the PayPal Mafia guys did. All right, so let us move on to absolutely fascinating company, Palantir. I was surprised to see that Thiel had started this company all the way back in 2003 when the weaponization of big data was just in its infancy. So what can you tell us about this behemoth, John?
Yeah, so Palantir Technologies is a public American software company that specializes in big data analytics. Headquarters in Denver, Colorado, was founded by Peter Thiel, Nathan Gettings, John Lionsdale, Stephen Cohen, and Alex Karp in 2003. Company's name is derived from the Lord of the Rings, where the magical Palantiri were quote-unquote seeing stones, described as indestructible balls of crystal used for communication to see events in other parts of the world. Some of the software that they have is, interestingly enough, again, named after nerd stuff. So we have Palantir Gotham. Of course, Gotham was a city where Batman was from in the DC universe. Is used by counterterrorism and analysts at offices of the United States intelligence community and the United States Department of Defense. Past Palantir Gotham, say Project Gotham. Well, actually, technically what it is. It was used by fraud investigators of the Recovery, Accountability, and Transparency Board, a former U.S. federal agency who operated from 2009 2015. So Gotham was also used by cyber analysts for informational warfare monitor. So it's very interesting that the United States government uses Palantir Gotham. So when you go to the website for Palantir Gotham, it's pretty much a software that gathers a lot of data. It gathers a lot of data so you can tag it, secure it, track it, put it in a spreadsheet, analyze it any way you possibly want to. Sounds very similar to American Cambridge Analytica and SEL Group, does it not? Except our government openly admits that they use it, especially the military.
Yes, it does bear an uncanny resemblance. So, what can you tell us then about the potential links between Palantir and Cambridge Analytica and the broader SCL network? There have been a lot of indications that they are quite firm that have come out recently, right?
Hold on, can I say one more thing about Palantir real quick?
Oh, absolutely, sir.
Of course, Palantir Metropolis, I guess, is an aside. It was kind of like data integration, information management, and quantitative analytics for like big capital. Okay, so they would use that to try to use predictive analytics to look at the market and see what kind of like they actually use JP Morgan to do it. They tracked people that worked at JP Morgan, their emails, their download activity, their browser histories, GPS locations, or JP Morgan owned smartphones to get data to analyze the people that worked for JP Morgan and what they were thinking and try to predict the market in the future and try to keep tabs on their workers. So I found that very interesting. Now, one of the last asides I want to talk about is for all those out there who still trust Joseph Robinette Biden and and Operation Warp Speed, which is now under Biden, which was under Trump, was that Palantir was tapped to monitor the outbreak of the coronavirus, as well as the production and distribution and usage of the COVID-19 vaccines to Americans and the United Kingdom too as well. But the software that they developed was called Tiberius. They called it Project Tiberius after, of course, Star Trek's Captain James Tiberius Kirk, and so all your data about the manufacturing of the vaccines, development of the vaccines, delivery of the vaccines, who's had the vaccine, all your private healthcare data and everything is through the United States government was given to Palantir. Now, for all those liberals out there who are very much concerned about Palantir, they now hold all that data.
And that's really significant because from what I've been told, in order to do a truly thorough personality profile on someone, you need access to their medical data. You need to understand if they have psychological problems, what kind of medication they're taking. All that stuff can contribute to making a personality profile as accurate as can be.
Yes. And so they now have access to all that.
Yeah, that's very chilling.
Yeah, but gotta make sure we get all those vaccines in us as soon as possible, even though Palantir is monitoring all of it,
Because I mean, you can't go wrong with a guy like Peter Thiel, as we've already seen, and some of these other guys. They're real humanitarians.
Yeah, of course, Daddy Biden fixed all that, right? He fired Thiel and stopped Project Tiberius for Operation Warp Speed. Oh, no, he didn't. So, oopsie doopsie. Just like, as an aside, Charlie Flynn is still head of United States Pacific Command. But, those insurrectionists are going to be arrested and thrown in jail any day now, like Roger Stone and Ali Alexander, House Financial Policy Member Ali Alexander. Any day now, Stephen, they're going to be brought to justice instead of the guy that was standing outside the Capitol protesting that didn't even go in, who got arrested and is being interrogated by the FBI. But you know. So sorry, just really steams me.
I'm sure Stuart Rhodes is really sweating bullets right now too.
Oh, of course, he's going to be arrested any day now, ahead of the Oath Keepers, any day. But so I guess to talk about Cambridge Analytica and SCL Group. So Christopher Wiley, the Cambridge Analytica whistleblower, who I think is a little bit more credible than who was the woman
Brittany Kaiser.
Brittany Kaiser, yes, who
absolutely Wiley is more credible than Kaiser.
Who Kaiser gave a speech with Stanley McChrystal at a Spooks conference. She was the second speech where he was the headliner. And then, of course, she also worked with EOS Block.1 founder Brock Pierce. Of course, Brock Pierce was connected to, and I've done shows on it, connected to the whole, what's his name? Brian Singer nexus with,
what was it, App Pupil, or the allegations from Singer back then or something?
No, it's the guy that they did Den Entertainment with, the online with Chad Shackley. Hold on, give me a minute. Mark Collins Rector, who is a pedophile. So Brittany Kaiser met with Brock Pierce about his presidential campaign and did some work on that. So extremely interesting, She's a real strong whistleblower against a Cambridge Analytica and SCL Group, but I digress.
Brock Pierce is also a former business partner of Stephen K. Bannon as well.
And of course.
Their little business to sell items or something from World of Warcraft.
Gold farming from World of Warcraft. The company was called Internet Gaming Entertainment. But yeah, so they're all interconnected with each other. All these people are. And y'all think that they're fighting against each other. They're really not. Wiley mentioned that Alexander Nix had several meetings with Palantir. senior Palantir employees worked on the Facebook profile data that acquired by Cambridge Analytica. Willie talked about and said, well, Wiley said that no, there was no official contract between Palantir and Cambridge Analytica. I mean, they pretty much worked with each other. They directly shared information. So, I mean, come on, you guys. I mean, that's what Palantir does. Is very similar to what Cambridge Analytica and SEL Group is data analytics for psychological and psychographical warfare. So,
absolutely. Now, you found evidence that Palantir also had dealings with a certain Michael T. Flynn and Stanley McChrystal, correct? I mean, both of these gentlemen are part of the broader Cambridge Analytica network, but also esteemed veterans of the Joint Special Operations Command. When did these guys hook up with Palantir and Thiel?
So I'm going to read a Wired article from 2012, and then I'm going to read a little bit of a BuzzFeed article for 2016. Okay. The trouble started in 2010 when Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, then the military's top intelligence officer in Afghanistan, now the head of the Department of Intelligence Agency, complained in a report to his fellow generals that the enemy is able to hide in plain sight because intelligence analysts in theater currently do not have the tools required to fully analyze the tremendous amounts of information currently available. Flynn demanded better systems for analysis. That so-called Joint Urgent Operations Needs Statement, or JUONS, was forwarded to the Pentagon's Combating Terrorism Technical Support Office. They decided that Palantir was the answer. The office started supplying dozens of Palantir servers to troops throughout Afghanistan, mostly special forces and Marines. Whenever assigned a DCGS-A, the reports back were often glowing. Palantir was more intuitive to use. Its interface was flashier. Its dossiers were easier to share. Palantir reduces time for countless analytical functions to streamline other once cumbersome processes. Major General John Tooling, commander of the 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force in Afghanistan, wrote in February 12, 2012 letter. The innovative and cooperative capabilities of Palantir have provided the mettle and effectiveness for conventional and special operations forces in combat. So Flynn was directly working under McChrystal. McChrystal was his mentor. So there you have the earliest connection between the two. And then we have the BuzzFeed article, 2016. Palantir Technologies, a Silicon data analysis firm whose biggest customer in the federal government, looks poised to have at least one powerful ally in the Trump administration. Michael Flynn, the retired lieutenant general, is reportedly under consideration to be the president-elect Trump's national security advisor. To help advance Palantir's cause in Washington since leaving government, has been a behind-the-scenes advocate for the tech company. Internal Palantir email reviewed by BuzzFeed News, for example, shows Flynn recommended that a financial firm uses Palantir's services. Palantir is launched in part with CIA, remember, money, that's true, Intel. Now valued at $20 billion, has long had contracts with defense and intelligence agencies. These contracts bring in revenue, and Palantir seeks to woo big corporations as customers, varnish its reputation for offering software so sophisticated and effective that America's top security services use it. If appointed, National Security Advisor Flynn could prove even more helpful to Palantir's interest in Washington than Peter Thiel, the Palantir co-founder and chairman, who prominently supported Trump's campaign, donated $1.25 million to a pro-Trump effort and giving a passionate speech at the Republican National Convention. While Thiel is now helping with the transition, the billionaire venture capitalist has said he has no intention of taking a full-time in D.C. So Flynn is the former director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, a Palantir client, which as of May had the codename Willow inside the tech company. While he hasn't advocated for Palantir in public, he's been outspoken on the issue, has become central to the company's efforts to embed its software throughout the United States military. Beyond Flynn and Thiel, Palantir has ally Republican Duncan Hunter Jr. And according to March 2015 email, Flynn, along with retired General Stanley McChrystal, acted as matchmaker for Palantir and Eastdil Secured, a real estate investment banking firm owned by Wells Fargo. Eastdil Secured have been working in organization and technology improvement reforms, said Doug Philippone, the head of Palantir's global defense program, in the email. Stanley McChrystal and Michael Flynn took a look at the progress and said it was unimpressive and that they, Eastdil, needed to reach out to us for help.
Yeah, it's certainly very interesting, especially in light of a lot of the activities that these two gentlemen have gotten involved with in recent years with QAnon and left-wing QAnon, for that matter. So let's look at some of the other characters. All right. Many figures in the PayPal Mafia later turned up in the ongoing cryptocurrency revolution. But before getting to that, let's talk about PayPal for a moment. Now, my understanding is that it was originally intended to be a digital currency outside the Federal Reserve System, right?
So PayPal's co-founder Luke Noziak said his firm initially wanted to create a digital currency that was independent from banks and governments, similar to crypto. This video is uploaded to crypto streaming service blockslive.tv on January 31st, 2019. Panel at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland last week. Nozak was asked whether PayPal or WeChat Pay, an in-app payment system used by the major Chinese messenger, already solved various problems related to online transactions, or whether cryptocurrencies can also solve these problems. Responding to that question, Luke said, many people do not know this, but the initial mission of PayPal was to create a global currency that was independent of interference by those, corrupt cartels of banks and governments that are debasing their currencies.
Now, it's interesting to note that PayPal really had to reverse course, I believe, around 2001, 2002, when they were hit by a couple of indictments, I believe would be the word. One came under the Patriot Act, but the initial volley was fired from New York State. And it came from a certain prosecutor who went by the name of Elliot Spitzer, who was, of course, later taken down after he had become the governor of New York. It was the governor, right?
You're talking about
Spitzer?
Spitzer?
Yeah.
Yes, of New York. I think it was like 2007, 6, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I believe that was the case. Of course, the his downfall was caused by a sex scandal, and it does appear to be the case that Roger Stone played a role in
a very strong role in that case. Yes.
Of course, Roger Stone later became a bit of an advocate for Hulk Hogan, and of course, Peter Thiel sponsored Hulk Hogan's lawsuit against Gawker in order to try to bankrupt the website.
And they say it's because Gawker supposedly outed Peter Thiel as being homosexual. Supposedly, that's the reason why.
So, yes, it's very interesting how incestuous all this is. But Thiel left PayPal shortly after these lawsuits were brought by New York State and the federal government. So it is interesting that several years later, Spitzer gets taken down by potentially someone in the figure of Roger Stone, who seems to travel in many of the same circles as Thiel does. So, yes, coincidence or, well, we don't know, but it is very interesting nonetheless. All right, so let's get to cryptocurrencies here. Now, this is a really fascinating topic. The first sort of concept of cryptocurrencies emerged with the cypherpunks during the early 90s. And this is also the outfit that, originally came up with what would later become Tor. This was sponsored by, I believe it was called the Electronic Frontier Foundation or something like that, that was set up by members of the cypherpunks. That was a mailing list, and there were some other interesting figures who were involved with the cypherpunks. One of them was Julian Assange, of course, the founder of WikiLeaks, who is either a hero or a villain, or potentially a combination of the two. That really remains to be seen. There's another interesting guy, Jacob Applebaum, I believe is how it's pronounced. He was a prominent hacker in the cult of the dead cow, and would later become a major supporter of Tor in the early days. So it's interesting that the cypherpunks, they were really crucial in promoting cryptography among the online community in the early days, and had really laid the foundation for Tor, and to some extent as well Signal and Telegram, and effectively these means of encrypted communications. So that was one of the major things that they had advocated, and the other was an encrypting currency, which is very much what the cryptocurrencies, hence the name, ended up becoming. So there's been a lot of theories over the years that the cypherpunks were behind that. One of the figures who's been put up was Nick Szabo. Can't really say for sure. Of course, John's got his own theories about this, but Szabo was a guy who was involved in the early days of Bitcoin quite prominently, as was Hal Finley, I believe, another one. So there is this interesting lineage with the cypherpunks, but certainly Peter Thiel seems to have been very close philosophically to them. I've been searching for potential links between the cypherpunks and Peter Thiel or somebody like Elon Musk. I have not turned up anything yet, but they do share a lot of the same libertarian principles. So I suspect there is something out there, though probably there have been some efforts to scrub it in light of some of the things with the cryptocurrencies. So, on that note, who were some of the early PayPal Mafia figures who became active in the early Bitcoin community, John?
Yes. So I got a lot to go over here. So the Founders Fund is a San Francisco venture capital firm. I mentioned him earlier. It was formed in 2005. The firm was organized by PayPal founders Peter Thiel, Ken Howery, and Luke Nozak, and raised $50 million for its first fund for individual entrepreneurs and angel investors. Of course, they would fund SpaceX, Palantir, and Facebook. Founders Fund invested in BitPay in 2013. BitPay started in 2011 as a Bitcoin payment service provider that offers cash payment processing services for merchants and a BitPay card that you can use at certain ATMs to exchange Bitcoin for cash. Founders Fund was also one of the early investors for Ripple Labs, the company that controls the cryptocurrency Ripple. Back during 2013, Ripple Labs started in 2012. Supposedly remains an investor today. In 2017, Founders Fund purchased 15 to 20 million of Bitcoin. On May 2013, speaking at the Thiel Foundation or 20 Summit last week, Peter Thiel said he gave a talk back in 1999 that mentioned the end of monetary sovereignty and how crypto money was going to quote unquote change the world. I do think Bitcoin is the first one of these that has potential to do something like that yet. Now, very interestingly enough, Peter Thiel's very double-minded about crypto, unlike you could say Elon Musk is, where sometimes Thiel will be like, I love crypto, but Bitcoin has issues because the Chinese are making money off it and mining it all. All right. So it's kind of like got this dual-minded with it. But they seem to be very much backing Ripple and some other cryptocurrencies that we'll get to later. Now, Ripple is kind of going to be like a cross-border payment solution that's going to replace Swift, which is kind of like what Swift does today. So Swift is kind of like the intermediary. You know, when you use your MasterCard or your Visa at the store, they're the ones that kind of transfer the money, the debit from your bank to the merchant themselves or the middleman. So Ripple is supposed to replace that and supposed to do it around the world. They've worked with MoneyGram. They've worked with Bank of America. They're currently being sued by the SEC right now, but I expect them to win or settle with a marginal effect to the cryptocurrency themselves. And it appears that Ripple is one of their world order currencies. I used to thought it was an old world order currency because Ben Bernanke spoke at their conference. However, I think it's a new world order currency. Ripple is because of Peter Thiel's staunch involvement in Ripple Labs. So I guess it's an aside, but something I want to mention. But I got a lot more to go through.
If I can interject for a second, yeah, Thiel was certainly an early investor in Ripple. But another guy who was really significant in its rise was the enigmatic figure of Matthew Mellon II. He is a member of the storied Mellon family from Pittsburgh, who are one of the most powerful families in the history of this country. You do not hear about the Mellons as much as you do about some of the other houses like the Rockefellers or the Morgans, but they rose to prominence in the same era as those families, and they arguably are still going pretty strong in the 21st century, whereas the Morgan family is petered out to some extent, and the Rockefellers certainly don't have anywhere near the same juice that they did after David died. So anyway, the Mellons, though, they're still in the game, and Matthew Mellon was one of the most prominent figures within the family, arguably the most successful, certainly of his era. He was a billionaire, and much of his fortune had been built off of cryptocurrency. Now, besides being a member of the Mellon family, He is also, from his mother's side, related to Anthony Joseph Drexel, who was one of the founders of Drexel Burnham Lambert. Now, this became a rather infamous financial institution in the 1980s. It was the bank that Michael Milken primarily worked through. Of course, Milken was part of that same milieu in New York City in the 1980s that also...
And pardoned by Trump.
Yes, and pardoned by Trump. It included Donald Trump. It included Roy Cohn. It included, the head of Apollo Investment Group. What's his name? Leon Black. Is that who I'm thinking of, John? But yes,
Who had his own connections to Jeffrey Epstein,
yes, and I was going to say
Ghislaine
Epstein.
Maxwell, and Donald Trump as well.
Yes, Epstein was also very much a part of this milieu. So that certainly raises the possibility that Matthew might have, been a part of, or obviously he would have been a little young to have been actively a part of that, but he would have grown up around these circles potentially. Not sure, how close the family involvement from his mother's side still was with the bank at that point in time, but it is really interesting. On the note of his family as well, he has a brother who goes by the name of Christopher Mellon. Christopher Mellon is a former figure who worked for the Senate on the Senate Intelligence Committee board. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but he essentially was an ongoing guy involved in the civilian side of the intel community for many years. Fairly prominent Democrat, unlike his brother Matthew, who is a Republican, or was a Republican, I should say. Christopher is most well known recently because of his involvement with Truth Stars Academy, the network set up, or the outfit rather set up to initiate UFO disclosure, which in theory we should be getting any time. Christopher has a lot of weird interests. His brother did too. Among other things, he died in 2018. This was when he had gone to Mexico to a drug rehabilitation center, I believe, which included giving him DMT, which led to a heart attack. Matthew Mellon was also a friend of Peter Thiel, unsurprisingly. So there is also that connection. And it was significant when he started to invest heavily in Bitcoin, I believe back around 2012 or something to that effect, because of his status, as this scion of these old guard Washington banking dynasties. He was one of the first figures to really bring legitimacy to cryptocurrencies. It's interesting to see that he and Thiel appear to have teamed up in the early days to really build Ripple up into what it is today. So, yes, it's certainly another character to consider in all of this, and a major figure in building up cryptocurrencies, and also one with a rather strange death. So anyway, getting back here to some of these other cryptocurrencies, how about this reserve rights thing?
Oh yeah, so on March 2021, Peter Thiel invested in Ripple's competition cryptocurrency reserve rights, which I've been looking at reserve rights for a long time. And very interestingly enough, both Ripple and reserve rights were shielded on 4chan, as well as many QAnon followers and promoters and operatives or bots or whatever you want to say shield XRP and Ripple as their currency as well, which would be very interesting because Ripple is always looked at in the cryptocurrency community as being like their coin, the elite coin, the world order coin. Like no one likes
Ripple.
Well,
it's backed by a member of the freaking Mellon family. I mean, you don't get any more like old world than that in this country, man.
But 4chan would have, they still today have multiple, XRP army threads, XRP army shielded by the QAnon, some of the QAnon backers and supporters, those members of the XRP army. So this is just an interesting aside that they also shield reserve rights, and also why I have some XRP and reserve rights myself, because can't I use the American dollar, and Lord knows what it's been used for since its existence. So try to make a little money for myself. Maybe I can hopefully do something good with for XRP and reserve rights. You know. So
It's
got a little.
it's interesting with reserve rights too, because they've openly talked about this potentially being used as replacement for a fiat currency.
I mean, that's what it is. I mean, you
Mhm.
have, the reserve token, which is a stable currency pegged at a dollar, and you have the reserve rights token, which is was used to stable the stable coin, the reserve token, and the reserve rights token is what you can actually purchase right now. It's 4 cent. And they have a very complex way of how it pegs it to around a dollar as much as you possibly can get it to be. And actually, reserve is used very interestingly enough in Latin American countries, but the biggest Latin American country that it's used for is Venezuela. So it's very interesting that Peter Thiel's backed cryptocurrency is being used by Venezuela, but I thought they hated communism, but it's being used in Venezuela right now as a way of kind of, circumventing the hyperinflation that's in Venezuela. But it's just really interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of seems like that's really the new frontier for cryptocurrencies. I mean, they're really targeting a lot of the developing world, especially in Latin America and Africa as well. Certainly a lot of these nations there. I mean, their currencies have had a lot of issues, to put it mildly, over the years. I mean, that certainly is an appealing alternative on a lot of practical levels.
Yeah, so very much so. To quickly finish up, so Vitalik Buterin, who's the creator of Ethereum, one of the biggest cryptocurrencies in the world, received $100,000 Peter Thiel Fellowship Grant for his work on Ethereum and future products. Peter Thiel backed a $2.1 million seed round for crypto investment startup Layer One. Layer One has its own mineable proof of work privacy focused coin called Grin, as well as Layer One builds turnkey fully integrated Bitcoin mining dating centers. Former PayPal Mafia member Steve Chin in March 2019 became an advisor to Theta. So Theta is kind of like the new YouTube that uses blockchain technology. It's a peer-to-peer video streaming network. It's actually a good coin to look into. Not financial advice, not financial planner for any of this stuff, but some stuff you should look into. Peter Thiel also in September 2020 gave money through Valir Ventures to the European crypto brokerage Bitpanda. Tesla bought 1.5 billion in Bitcoin in the fourth quarter of 2020. And also Tesla announced it would accept Bitcoin for payment, but later renounced that on May 2021. However, that's up in the air because Elon Musk met with United States Bitcoin miners, and Bitcoin miners said they'd go more green. My guess is just a way for Elon Musk to manipulate the market. And also to cover for this story, around the same time, Palantir announced on May 11, 2021 that it would take Bitcoin as payment for services. And in May 2021, Teal Capital put $30 million of funding for Block One, the company that controls the cryptocurrency EOS. And Brock Pierce was the founder and chief strategy officer for Block One, but stepped down after John Oliver on Last Week Tonight brought up lawsuits that Brock Pierce was involved in the past. So, and also Peter Thiel invested himself in Block One back in July 2018. So he's heavily invested in Block One and EOS, and I seriously doubt that Brock Pierce has completely cut himself away from something he created himself. And me and you discussed Brock Pierce earlier. So yes, there are extremely numerous connections between the PayPal mafia and
Well, also too,
cryptocurrencies.
PayPal itself was significant in giving legitimacy to Bitcoin in the early days when it started, setting up an exchange for it, kind of, right?
Well,
Or
they
not
did.
exchange, but they started accepting it or something to that effect.
Well, recently, they have. It's over the past year, but you used to you could buy and sell from Coinbase directly to PayPal, which is very interesting. Which they took away the ability to buy, but they brought it back. But yeah, now actually, most of all the cryptocurrency that you bought on PayPal could only stay on PayPal, but now they're allowing you to take it off and put it in your own wallet. So now it will become almost like an exchange on PayPal now.
Oh yeah.
So. That was announced yesterday.
And it's also, we had just talked about this a little before we went live, but also I believe it was the 4th employee who was hired by Coinbase was a veteran.
Martine Nijdilik.
Yes. We're not entirely sure at all how to pronounce that, but yes, she was the 4th employee of Coinbase hired, and also a veteran of PayPal, I believe.
Yeah, she's a chief compliance officer for Coinbase for 2 years. And yes, she used to be senior director for eBay and PayPal for 5 years. So now she's working at Dapper Labs. And Dapper Labs, of course, does CryptoKitties and kind of cryptocurrency related.
And then what? Elon Musk support for Dogecoin too. Is that what it is?
Yes, Doge, Dodge, Doge. Who knows? But yes, him manipulating the price of Doge and Bitcoin. Yes, by his tweets about cryptocurrency. It's been happening.
So
mentioning Doge on SNL.
Yeah. So, it's important to emphasize, as we're trying to do here, that, the PayPal Mafia, has a lot of exposure throughout the various cryptocurrencies. It's very interesting. So, on that note, let's get into the pink elephant in the room. Allegedly, Bitcoin founder Satoshi Nakamoto. The general consensus is that this is a pseudonym for the actual Bitcoin founder, or more likely a group that created Bitcoin. Now, the PayPal Mafia has long been implicated in these intrigues, but there's one particular member whose name comes up in conjunction with Satoshi over and over again. John, tell the kids about who I'm talking about.
That would be one SpaceX and Tesla founder, Elon Musk. Now, it's a theory of mine and theories that people talked about on the internet, and that Elon Musk, or at least the PayPal Mafia in of itself, was very much in the involvement of the beginning of Bitcoin. That Satoshi Nakamoto is either Musk himself or members of the PayPal Mafia. Seems highly likely, in my opinion. Elon Musk is very much a figurehead for Bitcoin, as well as Litecoin, as well as Doge. Litecoin is a fork of Bitcoin. Dogecoin is a fork of Litecoin. And it seems highly likely. There's a majority of Doge that is held in one wallet since its very beginning. And some people say that it's Elon Musk that holds that wallet, so much so they call him the Doge Father. I'm not going to say that 100% this is true, but there are numerous people who understand cryptocurrency who believe it to be true. So it's extremely interesting. Wouldn't you agree, Recluse?
Absolutely. And it's important, again, to go back to PayPal and their, attempts effectively to become a, decentralized digital currency. That didn't happen back in the early noughts. So it kind of seems like for the second attempt, they took or whoever set up Bitcoin took kind of the polar opposite approach. It was done in stealth with the Satoshi character, an obvious pseudonym. It's kind of leaked into the public very slowly. Initially, it's used primarily in the underground for transactions involving drugs and that type of thing. And it's slowly, taken more into the mainstream to the point where then the various PayPal Mafia figures and some of these other curious characters like Matthew Mellon were able to openly step in and become involved with it. And by that point in time, it had gained enough traction to where it wasn't as easy for the governments to crack down on it. And to some extent, this is just speculation on my part, but I think it probably had to do with the advocacy for from the military and the intelligence community. I believe one of the early Bitcoin guys met with the CIA, I think, back in 2012 or something like that, and reported back that the CIA was pretty enthusiastic about it.
And also one last thing, Sahil Gupta in 2017 wrote an article on Medium that Elon Musk probably invented Bitcoin. Now, he was a former intern at SpaceX. So he also raised some points that in 2018, Bitcoin paper was written by someone with a deep understanding of economics and cryptocurrency. Elon founded and wrote production internet software for Zip2 at X.com PayPal. Bitcoin source code was written with someone with the mastery of C++. Elon clearly understands C++, insisting it be used at X.com and SpaceX. Experience aside, Elon has demonstrated the ability to learn and apply knowledge quickly. So I know there's tweets that allude Elon hinting at it. I don't know. It's just, I'm not saying he is. All I'm saying is, if I woke up tomorrow and it was put out that Elon Musk was Satoshi Nakamoto, I would say seems about right.
I mean, getting back to the angle with the intelligence community as well. I mean, I think, it's the reasons why it would have had a certain appeal. I mean, simple answer is plausible deniability. As we've seen in the years since, Bitcoin was rolled out, it's become the preferred medium of exchange for a lot of hacker groups who sometimes are working under state governments, sometimes under false flags. So it's a way effectively to launch operations with a certain degree of plausible deniability, funding these digital mercenaries, essentially. And I think it's entirely possible. This is speculation on my part, but I do think it's entirely possible that there is a kind of gentleman's arrangement between some of the major world intelligence services, not unlike the sort of indications we've gotten as to the international drug trade. There's kind of a similar gentleman's agreement in that regard as well. But I think there was maybe a kind of gentleman's agreement with crypto. It's a way, for these different agencies to carry out their black ops without it directly tracing back and potentially getting out of hand in terms of maybe a more broader war between superpowers. So it has a useful purpose in that regard. And as time has gone on, the financial institutions also found many useful purposes for it. So I do think when you look at the different stages of Bitcoin, it does show that whoever was doing this was playing a long game. They started with small steps, first sort of showing how it could be used for small time crime, then showing practical applications to various intelligence services, and then going mainstream with Wall Street. And now it's kind of turning into a bit of a behemoth to the point that national governments really are just going to have to deal with it. It has too many practical applications in the 21st century to be stopped, I would argue, at this point. So, yes, it's very interesting. And certainly when you look at the connections that Peter Thiel has had with the intelligence community, with Palantir for many years, you could see a scenario where he taps one of his golden boys, somebody like Elon, to start putting something like this together on stealth, release it into the digital wild, and just kind of subtly nurture it over the years. So,
yeah.
All right, let's talk about some of Mr. Musk's other business ventures for a moment. Tesla gets a lot of the headlines, but the really interesting one is undoubtedly SpaceX. John, how significant is his ownership in this company going to be as we delve headlong into Cold War 2.0 and the new space race? Will this be the Lockheed Martin of the 21st century?
Well, I don't know. It depends on, how successful the rocket engine launches have been and him launching things into space, which so far has not been. I really honestly think that's all a cover just for the Starlink communication satellites being put into orbit.
Yeah, well, I think also too. I kind of think a lot of this stuff is what blue sky technology or whatever you want to call it. I don't know if whoever's throwing money at this really expects it to produce a lot in terms of practical commercial applications for space, or even potentially practical defense ones. I mean, to some extent, it's Star Wars 2.0, the Strategic Defense Initiative 2.0, but you know, they got to have something to try to throw money at to jumpstart the economy. So, what better thing than another useless weaponization of space attempt?
I mean, I really honestly believe it's just a cover for Starlink. I mean, Starlink is, I mean, they're claiming it's giving satellite internet access to rural areas, you know? So they're launching satellites into low Earth orbit. I don't know, man. Is it wrong of me to worry more about the Starlink network and what they might be, what it may be used for? Could it be possible that it could actually be used for something like Star Wars was supposed to be, right? You know, I mean, who really knows at this point?
Yeah, yeah. And
I
it
mean,
seems like it would be especially targeted at developing countries. I mean, if it's designed more for rural areas, right?
well, yeah, but one thing we didn't mention is how the PayPal mafia and the Trump administration was heavily driving 5G around the United States and getting internet to the rural areas and getting 5G to the rural areas as fast as possible.
Oh, so that
So
is
they're talking
interesting.
about Starlink possibly being used for 5G.
Ah, okay, okay. Well, that is interesting.
So that's a huge infrastructure haul that Biden is continuing with his infrastructure plan that was originally going to be Trump's infrastructure plan, right?
Hmm.
So
Which
it's
was
just a
what going to be
continue.
Obama's infrastructure.
Yeah, so it's just a continuation of that, right? I mean, that's my belief of what really is up to with SpaceX is it's these little launching stuff in the space is just to keep the slack jock yokels, kind of like, ooh, and of course it not being successful. We're going to Mars. We're going to accept Bitcoin in Mars. Dogecoin in Mars. Elon Musk is tweeting out, right? And it's really Starlink. And I wonder what they really are doing with those low Earth orbit satellites up there. I mean, I'm very curious. I quite wonder what they're using it for. That's all. I mean, people might be like, John, you're a little bit crazy. And I'm like, well, I don't know. It just doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah,
So,
well, I mean, it's interesting too because I mean, a lot of these PayPal mafia guys, I mean, especially Musk, are poised, reap a windfall out of these infrastructure programs and these space exploration programs or space defense or whatever in the heck they're going to be framed as, which is going to put a tremendous amount of pressure on the U.S. deficit. On top of everything that's already happening. I mean, what the budget that they just announced for the next year or something is going to be at levels that we haven't seen since World War II in terms of the federal spending.
yeah, and SpaceX, especially Starlink, was funded by the Department of Defense, just like Palantir
Yeah,
was.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, a lot of this, it's going to put a tremendous amount of pressure on the dollar. It's very unnerving in that regard, but it will be very beneficial to cryptocurrency, no doubt.
Here we go. Air Force is experimenting with Starlink under Air Force Research Laboratory's Global Lightning Program.
Hmm.
So yeah, it really might be Star Wars. And Elon Musk is radical innovation needed to beat China militarily. The fighter jet era has passed, Musk said. The future is autonomous drone warfare, which I guess could be controlled by these Starlink low Earth orbit satellites.
Yeah, that is interesting because, yeah, I mean, I do think the drones will probably be a major factor in that going forward, and just in general AI and a lot of this stuff.
I
So,
bet you could probably find connections between Starlink and Palantir. Has to be. Has to
hmm,
be.
would not surprise me. Okay, as we head into the home stretch, let's do a little bit of speculating about the future. We know about Palantir's connection to Cambridge Analytica, and we know what Cambridge Analytica has done to the US population both before the 2016 election and most surely in the aftermath. The country has been polarized to the point that it's almost ungovernable, and largely through the use of big data. But to some extent, crypto may pose an even greater threat to domestic stability going forward. John, there's been some speculation that crypto could be used to bring down the US dollar as the international reserve currency, a full blown Mr. Robot type scenario. By the way, guys out there listening, if you have not watched Mr. Robot yet, I urge you to do so immediately. So, could you take us through those musings, please? And how likely is it, and what role would the PayPal Mafia play in all of this, John?
Well, I'm pretty sure they'd have a very strong play in it when supposedly Ripple is going to replace the global currency, the whole entire world. I mean, that's what they say Ripple's supposed to do. So if the PayPal Mafia, Peter Thiel, were early investors in Ripple Labs, and Ripple's going to become supposedly the international world reserve currency, well, there you go. People have been talking about this for years.
Yes, but it is not coming in the guise necessarily that it was long speculated by the conspiracy community. It's not looking like it's going to be the special drawing rights of the IMF necessarily.
No, it's going to be all digital. It's going to be put forth by, government organizations that funded,
Well, I mean, the kind of
groups
irony too is, I mean, a lot of this came out of the cypherpunks, which was largely a kind of anarcho-libertarian collective, at least allegedly.
I mean, come on, we know nothing could be free and decentralized, Stephen, and allowed to exist in the world. Come on now, brother. I know how many arguments I have with my friends where like, well, there's some crypto that's completely decentralized, and there's decentralized exchanges, and there's, privacy currencies that they can never know. And I'm like, yeah, good luck with all that. They know everything. I mean, what was the oh god, what is his name? When they seized the drugs from the dark web.
The Dread Pirate Ross. It starts with
Ross. What was the dark web? I don't know. I'm drawing a blank on the name of Silk Road. They seized a lot of cryptocurrency from Silk Road, right? And so what happened to that cryptocurrency? You know what I mean? And there's certain cryptocurrencies like XMR, Monero, that's supposed to be privacy backed, and you're not supposed to know, who sends a transaction, who receives a transaction. I think there's a lot of malarkey, in my opinion. I don't think any of them are truly safe. So I don't know. The government allows, my belief, the world order allows cryptocurrency to exist because one, they're going to eventually use it to enslave us all, and it's not going to be some IMF, United Nations blue helmet type aspect, right? And two, they're making a lot of money off of it right now. I mean, there are a lot of people making a lot of money off of it right now. This is probably going to replace stocks, I would assume, one day. I would assume almost completely. Maybe not. I guess we'll see. So is it going to be Ripple? Is it going to be reserve rights? Is reserve rights going to be, is Ripple going to be their national reserve currency, and reserve rights is going to be for like third world countries like Stellar Lumens? Is the United States going to have its own reserve currency, but Ripple's going to be their national reserve currency? I mean, who knows? It's all speculation of who's going to win outright. But I can tell you that the New World Order definitely wants this to happen. They want it to replace the old World Order banking system, which has, they've been claiming hasn't been sustainable, and I really doubt it is sustainable if you really look into it.
Well, the other thing too is there's from what I've gathered, there was also a lot of resentment from the PayPal Mafia in that regard, because I mean, these guys are mostly, based out of the whole tech sector in Silicon Valley and so forth. It's my understanding is it's always been a bit of a frustration, having to go with your hat in your hand to Wall Street to get money for a lot of this stuff. I mean, certainly they got the venture capitalists eventually there to step into the gaps, but I mean, they're still had to deal with a lot of the Wall Street financial system. And I think that was kind of another appeal with the cryptos, is you could totally bypass it for a lot of the startups and what have you as well, essentially cut the middleman out completely. Because I mean, I agree, they're not wrong and pointing out the obvious that, I mean, Wall Street has really become a bloated cow. It's, a parasite really on the economy at this point.
But you're not going to replace it with something like this, It's ridiculous. It's just robbing Peter to pay Paul with a new fresh coat of paint. So
Yeah, yeah, and to line the pockets of the emerging powers, so to speak. But I mean, it is, just fascinating. Kind of getting back to the cypherpunks for a minute. I mean, of course, they were really instrumental in Tor and setting up the ideology at the very minimum for the cryptocurrencies, eventually the signal applications and what have you. I mean, a lot of this stuff was hyped up by people like Julian Assange and whatnot. And then, of course, you had Cicada 3301 launch around 2012, I believe it
Mhm.
was, an alternate reality game,
Mhm.
which really, taught these people, the kids playing it, in the early years, how to use cryptography and specifically how to use these kinds of devices. There's been a lot of speculation that some of the cypherpunks might have been behind setting up Cicada 3301. We don't really know that, but certainly there is some compelling evidence that Cicada 3301 was game jacked at some point by the individuals who eventually put together QAnon, which very likely did have ties to Cambridge Analytica, which gets into this whole network with Peter Thiel and what have you. But it is interesting. You have the cypherpunks movement who came up with these wonderful toys, and then you have this alternate reality game in Cicada 3301 that teaches everybody how to use these toys, and then eventually you have the Q thing potentially linked to Cambridge and so forth. So it's an interesting series of events, and how you've effectively created a stealth movement very adept at cryptography.
Hmm.
So, to wrap up here, John, when you look at how things are playing out recently, especially in regards to Elon Musk, do you get a sense of the changing of guard? I mean, we've been alluding to this, but let's face it, the Davos crowd has gone all out in the past year to consolidate their power, but there's quite an air of desperation to this, to my mind. And then you've got the Epstein thing creeping back into the headlines, putting arch globalists like Bill Gates in the crosshairs again. I mean, elsewhere, the PayPal mafia looks like it's poised to mount a serious challenge to the neoliberal order. Is this your sense?
Yeah, very much so. My friend Jesse Spots did a show about Peter Thiel a long time ago, kind of compared him to the Rebel Alliance commander in Star Wars against the Empire. And you kind of look at it that way, where you have these love and light billionaires that kind of like the right world order, even people who are conservative or libertarian tend to like, right? So they like Elon Musk, Peter Thiel. You have, millionaires and billionaires. You have Patrick Byrne, Overstock.com. You have Mike Lindell. So they kind of like, look at these guys as like fighting against the empire, right? So it's just interesting that these people, Rod D. Martin, various members of the PayPal mafia, a lot of them tend to or be libertarians in theory, or tend to lean right, and they have connections to the Council for National Policy. So they kind of are putting up against the old world order, the CFR, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderbergs. And a lot of them are kind of seem to be hip, right? But if you ever watch a video of Peter Thiel talking, that I feel bad for him, but in this regard, he can't really talk. You ever listen to Peter Thiel speak? He
No,
stutters a lot. He
I never.
he stutters a lot, and say he sounds like mush mouth. He got a bunch of marbles in his mouth. And he's sweating and nervous, and just he's not good. Where Elon Musk is really good, a really good speaker. I mean, not the best speaker in the world, but he's leagues better than Peter Thiel. So yeah, it's my belief that they're kind of this is the new world order. They're the new world order, and they're going against the old world order. And so, Bill Gates is being taken out as the controlled billionaire that he was. The guy behind Bill Gates was Warren Buffett. And me and Mark from Houstonic Live has done numerous shows on that, and how Bill Gates wasn't extremely highly intelligent as everybody thinks he is. And his father, Bill Gates Sr., was a real power player with Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett was kind of like Bill Gates's handler and controller. So yeah, the old world order is being pushed aside, and now we have these billionaires and millionaires that are looking out for you and your best interest. Of course, I'm saying that in quotation marks, and everybody loves them, right? They're great, you know. And now you have the liberals hate them, the liberals hate them, you know, and the conservatives love them, and that's what you're, you know, it's vice versa for the old world order. You know, the liberals like some of them, even though they shouldn't, right? You know, they love their Bill Gates, even though they should be wary of corporations. And but I digress. The left used to be that way. They're not anymore. They love big science and big pharma and big military. And as long as Uncle Joe's in power, right? You know, so it's just sad. No one has integrity anymore, Stephen. You know, and even on the right, they don't have integrity either. You know, people just like these figures that are paraded out and dance in front of them. And Elon Musk says crazy things on Twitter, right? And you know, and he's talking about Dogecoin and Litecoin and Bitcoin. So he's really a great guy, and he's going to save us all, right? You know, and so that you kind of have this new world order competing against this old world order, and the old world order is being pushed to the side and fading to the side, man. And it's a crazy thing to watch. It really is. Because we were always told in the conspiracy cultures that it was going to be the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund. It was going to be the Council of Foreign Relations, Bilderberg Group, Trilateral Commission, you know, and in reality, it's this weird
like
New
almost
World Order
cyberpunk type.
Yeah,
dystopia.
Council for that. It reminds me of that one book by Neil. I think his name is Neil Gaiman. Snow Crash. You know.
Oh,
Is that-
Stevenson. Yeah.
Neil
Snowcraft.
Stevenson. Why did I say Neil Gaiman?
No,
Stevenson.
that's a great book.
And so it's going to end up being Snow Crash, right? The libertarian's worst nightmare. And so I just, or actually, libertarians' best wet dream, our worst nightmare. Is what I meant to say. So you know, I don't know. I don't know if it's ever going to get to that. I hope it doesn't. But it does seem like that's what's happening, and people need to wake up. They need to wake up and realize that Biden is very little different compared to Trump. They're both working for the same objectives, whether you realize it or not. It's a continuation of whatever the New World Order is going to be, and it wasn't what Alex Jones. Bill Cooper may have gotten slightly more to the truth than Alex Jones, but it wasn't what they had sold us or what they told us it was for decades. It's this going to be this. Look, these guys have your own vested interests, and you know they're going to help you out. It's going to be. God help us that we're wrong, recluse. God help us that it's not going to end up with, you know, some scandal with Biden and he's completely taken out and Trump somehow becomes president again. And then the QAnon becomes, I just don't, anybody listening, don't discount that happening, crazy shenanigans like that happening, because
yeah, we're really in uncharted waters, guys. I mean, it's just amazing. And yeah, I mean, with all of the spending that we're getting into here, I mean, especially with some of these proposed infrastructure programs, and I mean, obviously the insane amounts of defense spending and just all of this other insanity. I mean, I think well, I mean, you're already starting to see the inflation set in. I mean, you know, for those of you who have listened to this for a while, you probably know that one of my gigs is cooking. I work at a, you know, relatively upscale place in my little neck of the woods. And I mean, you know, a high-end upper middle class type dining, I would say. And like we can't even do chicken wings and things like that right now because they're too expensive.
Yeah, I've
Like,
heard that people selling chicken wings is too expensive for them to get it. The prices are astronomical.
I mean, we were doing like you know, prime rib, I mean, as a special once a month or once a week rather, you know, a year ago. And now, I mean, we're doing briskets, you know, and just in general, the quality of the food that they have put on a lot of this stuff has been declining for months now. You know, I mean, they used to get always this, you know, high end, well, I mean, not for everything, but I mean, a lot of like high end imported goods. And that's gradually gotten to be less and less, just more garden variety things from Cisco, which is, you know, for those of you in the cooking industry, you know, Cisco's pretty low down there.
No, yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. John knows what I'm talking about. But yeah, I mean, you're already starting to see this set in. I mean, we're trying our best to cover it up, but I mean, the signs are already there. And I mean, I'm not usually one of these people to get, hysterical about the prospects of inflation. But certainly when you look at the direction the country is going with, especially with inevitably the insane amounts of military spending for Cold War 2.0, it just it really doesn't look good for the dollar.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't look good for anything. And it's like, look, I'm neither a fan of Biden or Trump. Let's make that known.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
But I'm just saying that, if Trump does rise to power again, and it's going to be you won't be able to reach anybody. You won't be able to tell anybody that QAnon is a psychological operation and there's grifters and LARPs involved in it. You're not going to be able to say, and agents, you're not going to be able to say that anymore. It's going to, oh good God, it's going to be bad. So they're really trying to push these billionaires as being the ones who are going to save us. And they're really trying to push this false alien invasion nonsense. And it's all coming to, like, we always thought that the world order is going to be some like hell dystopia, like I mentioned, like, not like Snow Crash, but like, I don't know, I guess
Like 1984
like Stalin or something, or 1984 or whatever.
Yeah.
But no, it's more like Brave New World. And it's going to be really interesting, man. It's going to be really interesting.
Yes, it's certainly a brave new world. Let's just leave it at that. Well, as always, John, it was a pleasure to have you on here, sir. Definitely have to have you back on here again soon. We got to do that Stanley McChrystal show here one of these days.
Yes.
All right. Well, with that, I believe we will wrap up. As always, thank you guys for listening, and good night and good luck to you.